Welcome back, one and all, to Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast, coming to you sort of live with episode 37, with one of your hosts, Connor.
And I'm Ray, and for this episode we are looking at a classic run, which is the Hulk magazine, Volume 1, Issue 13, and for our modern run we're going to continue on with Charlie Huston's Volume 5, Number 4, which is Part 4 of The Bottom. That plus a whole heap of news, so sit back, relax, and get your Khonshu on.
Yes, thank you for joining us once again. We are back from reviewing all those wonderful modern runs and the Damnation reviews, and just having had so little time check back in on the classics as we hit the Hulk magazine run and the beloved, life-changing Huston run, as some probably wouldn't call it. But yeah, it's an exciting week. But before we crack onto all that Moon Knight goodness, Ray, how have you been? What's been going on?
Hey, Connor, how are you? Yeah, been pretty good. Quite happy this week. My footy team, the Tigers, won. So I was posting that, all my joy on Facebook there. So off to a good start to the season. Yeah, just reading a lot of comics in between a lot of work, just at work. So nothing too special. Caught up with a friend for his birthday last night, so that was pretty cool. Yeah, how about yourself, Connor? What have you been up to?
Nothing that social at all. Go the Tigers. They've kicked actually one of my favourite Storm's butts, so there you have it. But yeah, no, I've basically just been lying around reading some comics. Most importantly, Black Bolt, the wonderful Telling Arm and a Christian Ward series into this week, which gave me some very, very strong feelings.
Right. Does it really...
Such a great run.
Yeah, does it wrap up really well? Does it close it out?
Yeah, as best it can in, obviously the ongoing story of the Marvel Universe. But yeah, just a really happy, satisfying ending to an incredible sci-fi run. And catching up on old Moon Knight while I wasn't here for the final issue of the Crazy Runs in the Family Run, which I thought was absolutely wonderful, and I think really ties together the whole run with the rest of the Moon Knight mythos.
Yes.
And it's going to be very different when we end up tackling 194, I think. Yeah,
a new story arc, which would be pretty exciting, and some Becky Cloonan covers, which...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we've already seen a couple of them. They look pretty damn well, pretty damn good.
I hope she gets the interiors sometime.
Yeah, she's really... Yeah,
absolutely, just amazing. Done plenty of her own share of supernatural work as well.
Yes, right. There's as in the Damnation stuff, because there's plenty of that going around still as well.
Oh yeah, and I mean she's a lot of her creator-owned stuff is definitely supernatural Scrooge.
Sorry, Cloonan. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, she's worked even with Brian Wood before, who's tackled Moon Knight before as well.
Yes.
On some of his own series, yeah.
That should be good. And I noticed a couple of comments in our Facebook Moon Knight group about Ty Templeton coming on board as the artist. What are your thoughts on Ty Templeton? I can't say I know the art all that well, but some people seem to like it. Some people seem to not really like it. What's your take?
He was a very big still is, I suppose, Batman artist, and I think it'll be interesting to see him because he does have he has really sort of clean lines. He's very good at jumping between all manner of great all ages run and then doing some of the darker Batman stuff. But it'll be interesting to see how his sort of clean style matches with Bemis's sort of really wacky out there writing. Like he did an issue of the Mother Panic Batman special recently, which was a much edgier look at his writing, with even a character dressed in all white. So I think he'll definitely give Moon Knight a fair crack, and I don't think it'll disappoint. But we'll have to see how it compares coming straight off Bemis. Bemis's art, which was just the perfect match for someone like Bemis. Wait, did I say Bemis?
Yeah, I think you meant Burroughs. Yeah.
Yeah, Burrows Up, which was a perfect match with Bemis's writing, just complemented itself so perfectly.
And the I guess the new arc and what the story entails will be quite exciting as well. Again, it seems to be an exploration into the origin of Mark Spector. This time looking at his childhood, I guess, and how Khonshu affected his childhood back then, which we kind of saw in the Lupinar run. But yeah, what do you reckon? Looking at the origin kind of even further back for Mark Spector.
Oh, mate. He has some strong words on the run. I think he's, like me, very defensive of the pretty new take of Lumir's run. I really like that origin story. Do not step on that button. I think, yeah, actually, the classic issues we're reviewing this week are really, focused on the past, actually. We basically have two different types of origins to cover, and I think Lumir's is probably my favourite out of all the origins, so it's interesting to see just how much he changes, and just how much, especially since he definitely seems to be focusing on his life as a young child, which I guess we probably haven't seen the most, as Lupinar sort of painted him as a, just a young suburban kid having to deal with, mental health issues.
Yeah. And Bemis is not afraid to change things up, I guess, with the Moon Knight War. So this will be very interesting. Again, I think he'll get a lot of... I think there'll be a lot of feedback, I guess, on 194 and how Moonies and Loonies see the new story and the new direction. But yeah, I'm excited for it as well. And anything new, anything that can be added on to the Moon Knight canon is pretty cool, I think. Which actually also reminds me, Connor, a bit of news kind of in general. Marvel are now going to number their comics, have a dual numbering system there. What do you reckon with that, with having their legacy number as well as, their usual starting from scratch, like 1, 2, 3, 4?
Yeah, I think it really works at sort of giving the best of both worlds. Like, I don't at all give a shit about the numbering, whether I'm reading 193 or issue 6. Like, I don't really care, and I think the legacy numbering was, mostly for collectors, possibly. So, yeah, we'll see how people react to that as well, knowing that they'll have their legacy numbering still juxtaposed against issue 6. But, I think issue 1's just sells so much better than 188. So, it'll be good to see, runs given support just because they don't have to suffer being written in the hundreds.
Yeah, and I think it's a... I think it's a long time coming, this move, because as you say, look, there are marketing implications for the numbering, plus there are also implications for collectors as well, and I don't see a problem with having both numbers on there. I think that's fine. I think a little bit of the gripe has come from fans because I think they've got some of the legacy numberings wrong. Like I think Moon Knight, there's some contention as to whether it was 188, which we kicked off with the legacy series. So I guess that's kind of probably rubbed up the wrong way for some collectors who want to get precise numberings and stuff. But look, I don't see there's any problem. I think one of the loonies mentioned in our group as well. It's you can kind of take the number 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever as a almost as like an arc number. So almost like a subset of the, the greater number, whatever it is, 188, 189. Like yourself as well, I'm not too fussed with the numbers myself. I think this is a good compromise, and look, fans have been screaming for it one way or the other, and look, now we've got both, so it should appease everyone. But there might be a faction of fans out there that will just not like it as well. So I guess you can never please anyone. But yeah, I think it's totally fine.
Yeah, people will always be unhappy with it. No way. Even as a compromise, there's no way to please anyone. But I hope it does well for them.
Well, I hope they stick with it. I hope it's not going to be like this, and then they'll go back to one, a singular way
every
of numbering.
6 months.
Yeah. So let's hope they stick with it. Okay, well, besides Black Bolt, Connor, any other things that you've been reading lately as well?
I have been keeping up with... Got the Lockjaw comic I've been reading, because I like big dogs. They're cute. I think the Young Animal one has been kept up really fantastic. I think that's my favourite thing DC are doing. Once again, Ty Templeton did the Mother Panic issue, so quick callback there. But yeah, I think that's just such a crazy, imaginative run. I can totally see even Bemis doing something in that line, because I think that line totally appeals to his, let's just say, crazier sensibilities.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's been some pretty great weeks for comics in general, I guess. Like, there's just so much good stuff happening. I love what Valiant doing. We've got another issue of Bloodshot next week. We had the Damnation issue.
That's right.
Week,
Yeah,
it's crazy if you checked that out or haven't.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I haven't caught up with any of the previous weeks or the latest week's comics. So I've got to pick them up this coming week with this week's batch. So I'm looking forward to Iron Fist. I think that'll be great. And as loonies who have been listening to us know, we are part of a Damnation crossover of comic book reviews, and that Iron Fist issue 79, I think, will be taken up by the Sons of the Dragon, the Immortal Iron Fist podcast. So be sure to check them out as well. They've been doing some good stuff over there, all to do with Danny Rand and the Iron Fist. So no, it looked like a good week, Connor. I'm just looking forward to getting the stuff. I've been whilst I haven't had like all the latest issues come my way this week, I've delved back and being impressed with Scarlet Spider, I've actually gone back to a few of Peter David's old stories, and so I'm doing a reread from the beginning of actually Wolverine, I think it's volume 2 of Wolverine. And there was a run there, the Gehenna Stone Affair, and it was a 6-parter. And I think it was from issues 11 till 16 of Wolverine, written by Peter David. John Buscema was the artist, but inked by Bill Sienkiewicz. Sienkiewicz, sorry. Yeah, so that was really cool to see. I remember when I was reading it, when I was a lot younger, back in the 90s, not being too keen on the art, but I guess the tastes have matured now, and I was really digging it. And Peter David's story, again, I guess it just reaffirms how he's probably one of my favourite writers. I think he's really easy to read. It was a really fun romp. Reading a bit of old Wolverine. Connor as well, I think on another Facebook group, you posted up from the Serious Issues Facebook group, you posted up this thing about cats, which was pretty funny. And so what I thought I'd do a bit of a read of Thundercats. So I'm actually going through Thundercats. Yeah. Reading the original release from Star Comics. I think that they were part of Marvel Comics back in the 80s. I think it's obviously for a younger audience. Who was it? Jim Mooney was on art, and David Michelini was a writer with Jim Shooter as editor, but very catered towards, we have a TV show. This is really closely based on it, so just a lot of fun. Like, it's a 24-issue run, up to about, I don't know, issue 6 or something, and it just a bit of fun. So doing a lot of classic reads at the moment. But yeah, it's all whilst waiting for more Moon Knight issues, I guess, Connor. and having said that, I guess we can probably head into some of the news.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, well, once again we hit with another week of sort of Moon Knight, but just everyone kind of getting his name in as we head to I suppose the biggest thing in comics, Infinity War, soon. There's a lot of changes happening. Yeah. You're
obviously excited. Obviously excited for that, Connor.
Massively. I still can't believe it's the end of the month.
I know.
Especially so soon after Black Panther.
Yeah. It hasn't hit me yet how big a bigger thing this thing is. After 10 years or so of MCU films, we kind of get the culmination of it finally. So I'm sure it'll hit me when the opening credits start. But looking forward to it as well. So with out of these 5 points of news, Connor, I reckon number 3 is probably the the funnest one.
Yeah.
But look, I'll just start off. Look, to be honest as well, kind of haven't really read all through the articles here, but I just did a search. The first bit of news we have is from digitalspy.com, and it's basically them saying 7 TV shows which were stuck in development hell. And one of them obviously was connected to Moon Knight. He was mentioned and promised, I think it was, and we mentioned it before, Connor, during the Blade TV series. I think there were talks of Moon Knight being introduced.
Yeah, dropping in the second season that never dropped.
Yeah, but I guess that show didn't go too well anyway. And yeah, so we've had the talks as well of Stephen Esther Knight being interested to develop a Netflix TV show for Moon Knight. So I guess he's still on the radar for being produced on TV, but nothing yet really concrete. Let's hope that changes very soon. And then, there are a few others here, kind of, which, I don't know, just going through some of them, ones that piqued my interest were Night Thrasher. I thought he would have been pretty cool to do a show. Very, like a very C-list character, but he'd be quite interesting. And Lock and Key, the comics, I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's happening. There's currently a pilot being ordered and made for
oh, right.
Hulu, I think is the service that'll be hosting it, who did the Runaways adaptation. So that's yeah, that actually seems to be doing something again.
Oh, okay. Oh, great. Well, that's I've only read the first volume, I think, but that's been a great show. A great comic book series. Yeah, and look, there are a few others here as well. The Wild Wild West, not too interested in. Quantum Leap would be pretty cool. I think that would be a nice reboot. And of course, there's a Star Wars Underworld. I guess it was a TV show that they never decided to get on board. But Star Wars have a lot of exposure anyway, so I guess for every one that they don't make, like there's always like another 2 that they've got, coming out. Yeah, how about the next article there, Connor?
The next article is James Gunn discussing Soulstone theories in Guardians of the Galaxy, with Infinity once again coming up. Mm-hmm. Basically, if you don't exist inside many nerd Facebook groups, I can assure you that most things being talked about right now is just how many things are the Soulstone.
Yes.
Because it's the one thing, one of the only Infinity Gems we don't know about in the MCU, so you better believe there's new posts every day about what the theories are.
What do you
and
reckon?
Where it is.
Yeah, where do you reckon it is, Connor?
I'd probably sit in the camp that it's probably in Wakanda or something.
Yeah, that's one of the big theories. I reckon. I think the vibranium meteorite that crashed in Wakanda all those thousands of years ago. They reckon that there's a Soulstone in there, which is what's kind of powered the vibranium. Which is that's pretty cool. I read somewhere or heard there's so many theories. I heard that Thanos probably already has it. I mean, that could be the most boring, straightforward solution to it. Yeah, actually, no. Actually, I side with you now. I think that'd be cool if it's in Wakanda. That'd be pretty cool. But I was going down the path of Thanos just already having it, and he's trying to get the other ones. So I mean, because he's already quite powerful, so he's got to have, unless of course he's just a naturally powerful being. I think it would make sense as well that he actually has one at least already, and that kind of drives him on to get the others.
I hope. I don't think as good as it would be. I don't think we're somewhat any to believe that Moon Knight has the Soul Stone.
That'd be pretty cool. I think that would be pretty cool that he just pops up unannounced out of nowhere in the MCU, and he has the Soul Stone. That'd be great. Yeah, no. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if that will happen, but we can only hope. Look, I might just jump that third one. I'll go to our fourth bit of news, which is pretty quick, and I thought this was pretty funny. Look, it's long since passed. It was April Fool's Day. 1st of April. And this was from the Foreign Policy website. And it was actually really cool. They had a full-on, like, serious article on foreign policy and assessing prospects for new strategic challenges and opportunities. Yeah, it was really cool. So someone must be a fan of the MCU over there. But they did this whole article, talking about, I guess, a lot of it to do with the Civil War movie between Iron Man and Captain America. The very small bit of mention of Moon Knight came from, potential new members of the Avengers. Also, it goes through the relationship between Shield and Hydra. And even the Lagos incident, which again we saw in Civil War. It's really well written. It was a fun read, I thought. And look, very, very loosely tied to Moon Knight. But look, he gets a mention in there as alongside Spectrum, North Star, Brother Voodoo, Paul Wolfowitz, I don't know who that is, and Quasar. So yeah, it's a bit of a fun read, but very much tongue-in-cheek.
Oh yes, indeed. I know we had a few April Fools trying to get us on a new Moon Knight show.
Yeah, that was just so obvious.
I suppose there with those classic comic sites hitting those best comics of a month or so, of April or whatever. Mm-hmm. Those are some great fun articles to read, and we got one from the Vulture talking about the 8 best comics in April. And no, Moon Knight isn't there, sadly. Vampironica is.
Yes. The old Moon Knight alumni there, Greg Smallwood with his sister, Meg Smallwood. That was a really good issue. I mean, like we did mention it before. I think when it did come out, we had a bit of a discussion on it. Well deserved, I say. There are a few others here, Connor, that I'm not too sure on. I'm not sure if you know any of them as well. Dry Country.
I've read Dry Country.
Oh, really? Dry County, sorry. Yep. Is it Is it really good? Is it a standout? Or?
I don't think so. It's a very pretty book. It's getting a lot of love, so, I mean, I guess don't take my word for much, maybe. I didn't enjoy it, but it's getting a lot of love. But there are some fantastic graphic novels coming out. Seem to be quite heavy and wonderful, which I think I might even put on my radar.
Oh, fantastic. And I see there's one here from DC's Young Animal as well, Eternity Girl. You're reading,
I'm in love with that first issue, actually. I think that is very, very, very good.
Okay.
And I can't wait for the second issue, which is like next week, I think.
Excellent. So, amongst some quality books there, Vampironica. So, again, if you're a big fan of Moon Knight, and better still, if you're a big fan of Greg Smallwood, you can't go wrong with Vampironica. It's been getting really good rave reviews. My first venture into Archie comics, and I've got to say I'm pretty invested into it already. Like just issue 1, because I know nothing of Archie, but the main characters, and it's more like seems to be more like a Buffy, kind of almost even Angel version, because she's a vampire as well, but she hunts. It's like Blade, basically, isn't it? Yeah. So, very, very beautiful book. So that's good. Also, as well, just rounding off our bit of news for this week. Connor, so I wanted your thoughts on this as well. This was a cool article from movies.mixdown.com. John Boyega from Star Wars, he might be joining the MCU, which is very exciting. I would love to see him in there. I think he's been great as Finn in Star Wars. And they've got a few suggestions here, Connor. So, what are your thoughts here?
I think one of the big ones I saw is I guess it's been making the round, but that great fan artist Boss Logic did a cool shot of John Boyega as a Blade type character, or as Blade, which just sort of settled. I would totally love him. I think there was talks about getting him in a this possibility of Blade even hitting an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. type show.
Oh right, that'd be
cool. That would fit great with the current Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider as well.
Yeah,
a youngish actor like John Boyega leading the charge. I think it would just be lots of fun.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, I mean, I've seen that on Twitter as well of people saying, who do you reckon he'd be good at? And yeah, Blade would be pretty cool too. If you look at the conventional, say like, just like for like Marvel characters that are African American, say who would he be? A lot of the top tier ones I think have already been accounted for, like obviously Luke Cage and Falcon and of course Black Panther as well. But just looking at the list here as well, they suggest Moon Knight, which I think would be pretty cool. Something a bit different. What I really would like to see is him as Wonder Man. I think that would be that'd be awesome. I do like Wonder Man, and it would be interesting to see him because he's an actor, like a film actor from Hollywood.
Oh yeah.
But he's also meant to be a superhero, and he's quite heavily powered. So yeah, from this article, sorry, I'm jumping here, loonies. So let me go back. The like-for-like characters, Blade obviously is an obvious choice. Then you'd have Jericho Drum would be one, potentially tied in with Doctor Strange. And then, even Bill Foster's already taken, so he's already going to appear in the Ant-Man and the Wasp movie coming out this year. I don't know. Can you think of any other? There's Night Thrasher. I mean, we could have Night Thrasher as well. But yeah. But anyway, the article goes on to, I guess, broadening your perspective or ideas of who we could play. And so the non-conventional ones of, say, like Moon Knight. We can see John Boyega playing him as Mark Spector, which would be pretty cool. The article also says Wonder Man, Captain Britain, which is pretty cool, Patriot, and actually Blue Marvel, and he would be pretty good, although probably a bit young for Blue Marvel, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, the discussion of Moon Knight there, I don't know, I find John Boyega too lovable to...
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah.
I'd love him as Simon Williams, actually.
Yeah, I reckon it'd be good. It'd be great. Yeah. But yeah, Moon Knight, you're right. I mean, I don't immediately see him as Moon Knight, and not just because, he's African American, or he's not actually, he's British, isn't he? He's, as it says. So that's why I think they suggested Captain Britain, because he's British. He could lose the pesky American accent. Oh, actually, how about Bishop? Bishop will be pretty cool as well, Indigenous. Although I'd be happy to see an Australian play Bishop. That would be pretty cool. But anyway, yeah, that's an interesting article. So you'd, who do you reckon, Connor? You reckon you'd like to see him as Blade?
Or... Yeah, Blade or Sam Williams, or just, I don't know.
Yeah, I think.
Someone fun, I guess.
Yeah, okay. So because his personality is quite bubbly, right? That's true. Yeah.
Great screen presence.
Sorry.
Just a great screen presence in general.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, I'd put mine down for Wonder Man. I think it'd be pretty good. Pretty good for that. Alrighty. Well, those are the news articles. Again, very loosely connected to Moon Knight, but there is mention here and there. Right. Well, Connor, I think it's probably time we better get moving on to our first classic run. So why don't we go over the moon?
Awesome. Yes, starting off with our classic review of The Hulk, Volume 1, Issue 13, with lovely narrator from the Capes and Lunatic podcast, which we are joined together at the Hit With Fire, the collective group of podcasts.
Yeah.
Podcasts that we have sort of joined with to promote each other, and just a bunch of great other superhero podcasts to get your ears hooked into.
Yeah. Well, can I just also say as well, Connor, with the Capes and Lunatics podcast, what they've also done is they've got me onto Quasar. So I'm actually reading a bit of Quasar as well. Oh, I love
Quasar.
Yeah,
Which version?
I've started at the very beginning again. So Mark Grunwald's story. So it's Wendell Vaughn. And anyway, Capes and Lunatics podcast, one of their channels, so to speak, because they've got a few different podcasts. is that they're reviewing Quasar from issue 1 as well. So that's a lot of fun, loonies. If you do like the Cosmic, I highly recommend checking out the Capes and Lunatics for that. So sorry, Connor, I didn't want to...
No, not at all. Awesome, yeah. I suppose there's not much more to say. We will leave it to Phil to, I guess, introduce himself and slam out the bare bones for a new issue of the Hulk magazine. So take it away, Phil.
Hey everyone, Phil Parrish here for the Capes and Lunatics podcast again. This time I'm doing the bare bones review for the Hulk, Volume 1, Issue 13, the Moon Knight backup story, The Big Blackmail. It was released February 1979. Writer Doug Moench, artist Bill Sienkiewicz, colors Steve Oliff, and editor Rick Marshall. Two mysterious figures profile the characteristics and inner secrets of one, Moon Knight. Beginning with the weaponry Moon Knight has at his disposal, the two figures then continue to analyze Moon Knight's secret identities and his close companions. The study of our White Knight is not unlike that of Conquer Lord previously, but it is proven that the vulgar oaf is not behind this caper, but rather two men named Smelt and Lupinar. As they continue their studies, we see Stephen Grant and Marlene at Grant Mansion preparing the money intended to exchange for the Horus statue, which Moon Knight has sought after over the last few issues. Grant changes clothes and into Jake Lockley as he leaves Marlene. He heads towards the city to seek out the word on the street of any suspicious activity involving foreigners and large sums of money. It's in Gina's diner that Lockley finds Crawley, and it is Crawley, an unsavory-looking yet articulate fellow, who makes it be known to Lockley that a truck hijacking has been planned by some out-of-town criminals. Lockley thanks Crowley, then departs to prepare his rendezvous with LaRoe's men for the exchange of money for the Horus statue. Moon Knight arrives at the drop, a deserted warehouse on Route 32 near the Hudson River, on the dot, and he encounters a group of armed men with the Horus statue. They demand the cash, and Moon Knight hands it over. In true criminal style, they then try to keep both the cash and the Horus statue, but Moon Knight begins a different sort of negotiation involving his fists and kicks. He manages to subdue all the armed men amidst a hail of bullets and bodies, and Moon Knight leaves unscathed with the Horus statue. Moon Knight chooses to leave the cash, however, and the ploy to leave it in order to trail the criminals to their next exploits appears to work. Though Moon Knight and Frenchie do not know what the criminals plan to buy, or to gain from hijacking the truck, they follow the convoy of cars as they leave the warehouse. Our heroes are indeed led towards a huge truck on the highway, and Moon Knight jumps from the mooncopter just as the convoy force the truck to come to a halt. The hijackers are met with a surprise load of armed guards inside the truck as they attempt to steal the goods inside. Before any real bloodshed occurs, the guards are shot down strategically by the now uncostumed Moon Knight. It's Mark Spector, and he cunningly shoots the guards enough to knock them out, not kill them, as he aims for all their bulletproof vests. He pretends to be employed by LaRoe, the very same employer of the terrorists, and he assists them in stealing the cargo. To Mark's surprise, it's plutonium, which the terrorists have obtained, and it's part of their plan to hold New York City for ransom, lest the city be destroyed by nuclear detonation. To add more of complexity to the matter, the two mysterious figures, Lupinar and his assistant Smelt, also have a vested interest in not only Moon Knight, but also in the truck hijacking. Lupinar, a fierce-looking, swashbuckling mastermind, sends someone dressed as Moon Knight to stop the hijacking, confront the terrorists, but also to flush out the rotten apple, which in this case is Mark Spector. Confused at the sight of the Moon Knight imposter, and wary that his cover will soon be blown, Mark is left in quite the pickle. The issue ends with Lupinar almost wishing that his Moon Knight imposter will fail, as he yearns to confront and defeat Mark Spector, aka the Moon Knight, face to face.
That's all right with me.
Yes, Thank you so much, Phil. That was a great narration there of the backup story to the Hulk magazine, Volume 1, Issue 13. Connor, yeah, what did you think of this issue? This was there was a bit of familiarity, but there's also something new, I guess.
Yeah, so this is actually my first time tackling these older issues. I guess I always kind of just ignored them not being in the immediate Moench canon. So I think diving into this, I was pleasantly surprised with the just, how enjoyable it was. It was very classic. Nowhere near the incredibly different ways Moench would take the character throughout his 30 issue, well, more like 50 issues of stories. Mm-hmm. But it was just sort of a nice, fun, simple story of terrorists and foiling plots, almost like more of a spy story.
Yeah.
Which was also just kind of nice. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of seeds planted here that would further be perfected in the run, which is also fun to look back at.
Yeah, looking back at a lot of Moench's early runs, I think he's definitely still trying to find his voice. There are a lot of some issues that we've seen, I think, prior to this, so like issues, 10, 11, 12, can tend to be bogged down with a lot of weaving and ducking and red herrings here and there and extra characters that you really have to keep track of. So sometimes he does get away and sometimes he tries to put too much in the stories. But overall, I thought it was great. I think it was I'm enjoying it, and I don't know whether it's reading more and more of his 70s run, but really enjoying it. And what I did kind of see though was that there is a running theme. Like he even mentions it here with Conquerlord, but we see a similar format of two villains looking at, I guess, a dossier or a profiling of Moon Knight. And we actually see that later on as well in the Huston run. So it's a common thread that runs through a lot of the Moon Knight series. But yeah, it was quite enjoyable. I thought the art was great as well. So how about we kick off with one of your points, Connor, as one of the
one of my points. I suppose I'll lead directly from there.
Mm-hmm.
That it's the art actually is very interesting. It's a very different kind of Sienkiewicz, I suppose. It's Sienkiewicz. You almost really defined figures, not quite the real stylized craziness and in-depth beauty that Sienkiewicz would eventually be acclaimed for later on with stuff like New Mutants, Moon Knight, and his stuff over at DC as well. So yeah, actually, I thought this whole magazine was pretty well put together. Just flicking through the Hulk story as well. This must have been a different kind of paper stock, because reading this digitally, as we had to, just seeing the way how different and sort of clearer and better inked these are compared to the regular newsprint paper we've seen before, and I just thought it gave just such a really well defined look at this story.
Yeah, good point. I was going to raise that as well, but I think you might be onto something there, kind of with the paper stock as well. It certainly is a very different look with Sienkiewicz's art, and I was wondering whether, since it was for the Hulk magazine, whether editorial had or the editors had requested from Bill Sienkiewicz to draw, I don't know, to draw something in a slightly different style. It just seems to have a different style of art compared to a typical comic book, and that may very well be, as you mentioned as well, the inks and the colouring that is employed on it. And as you say as well, that again in turn might have something to do with how that falls onto the paper. So, but it has a very distinctly different style.
I think.
Sorry.
Oh no, you finish.
Oh, just to say, it's still a very young Bill Sienkiewicz, so his style will develop over the years, as we'll see. But it's still very impressive. But yeah, just very, very non-Sienkiewicz as we have come to know him.
Yeah, I think it's almost the best comparison would almost be pulpy or pin-up art from the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
Like, it's just such a different style of character, really focused on, what's the word? Dun, dun, dun. Like, autonomy, not autonomy, anatomy, that's the word.
Yeah.
And just, really just clear characters.
Yes.
And it just, the way it works, just sort of very much stands out from the rest before it goes super stylized, but
Yeah.
I think it works sort of well into almost the less super heroic, more spy nature of the story.
Yeah. And I think adding on to what you're saying, Connor, as well, there's one panel I'm looking at here. It's page 41 of the digital version that we have. And there's a shot here of, you're talking about anatomy, there's a shot here of Mark Spector changing. And so you get his, Marvel abs and him he's changing his shirt. But if you look at the colouring and the inking on that, it's just, to me, it's not something that you usually see in a comic book. It seems it's a lot more, I don't even know what you describe it. It's a lot more, I guess, refined. I mean, it's got the tones of the skin colour, and it's got the secondary lighting hitting his body as well. So it actually, I don't know, I think it goes beyond what you usually see in a coloured comic book. That's my impression of it.
Yeah, it almost seems pulled straight from the underground of comics at the time. The kind of art that would, be immortalised by publishers like Fantagraphics and would be very, well taken from the likes of Will Eisner.
Right.
And just, it just seems something so, unknown to Marvel Comics that we've seen before as well.
Yeah.
And, I guess something we also never saw again.
Yeah, it was just a shame because this is, it is quite nice actually. I do find the art quite appealing, and again, hats off has to be given to Steve Oliff on colours. I think the colours really do pop. I'm just trying to think of. It reminds me. The medium also reminds me of it's not crayon, but it's there's something to it, like pastels or something that the way that the colours are used, and like I'm just looking on the red couch, there's a gleam to it, like there are white strokes there to make it kind of give it a bit more body. But he does that. Steve Oliff does that for, again, if we go back to that anatomy of Mark Spector, the way it's coloured, it gives it a bit more three dimensions to it than what you usually see in a comic book. So. Yeah, and there's a lot of lighting here, I find, as well. If you go flick through, Jake goes to Gina's diner. There's an uplighting there to Gina and Jake's face, giving a mood. Then you look at the next page with Smelt. There's that evil kind of green lighting shone from below as well to give him a sense of villainy. So yeah, very very smart bit of colouring and shading here, I think.
Yeah, I think definitely a big shout out for me goes to The Colours Are Well by Steve Oliff. I think which page? Pages probably about 48 is probably like a real highlight of the action this issue from me. Sinkovich giving it all to displaying the action in full force, and then just the colouring giving the atmosphere and mood of the page more so than even the art is.
Yeah.
Just really well done. I wonder also as well if this was time constraints. Possibly they had a lot longer to do something like this, and they possibly would as well. Because, Sinkovich became a master of action as he went on, but such a young artist like this, even in the first pages of Moon Knight 1, it possibly wasn't working with the same amount of time here.
Yeah, I believe that they probably had a lot more time to work this out, because I think these issues and these magazines had a lot more pages to it, so they probably gave them a longer deadline to do stuff. And that page that you're talking about, Connor, as well, where he starts to fight the goons, yet another horde of goons. I like the way that Steve Oliff uses the colour here, because if you think about it, if Moon Knight is essentially jet and silver or black and white, he's a very monochromatic hero, and to add a bit of energy and to make things pop in an action scene, what Steve Olive has done here is that uses a lot of the warm colours of your red and your yellows and your oranges when he's fighting them, and a healthy dose of what do you call them, Connor? Just fonts of sound effects and stuff.
Onomatopoeia?
Yeah, onomatopoeia, just just filling the panel. So you do get a lot of sense of movement. Again, here that's more so from Sienkiewicz's art, but a lot has to do with the colour, the warm and hot colours, to actually give this action scene a bit of sizzle. But yeah, it's really cool stuff. Look, one of the main aspects I thought, and to throw it out there, would be, I guess, the introduction of the new villains. So we have a couple of new masterminds or conspirators in this issue, and they are in Smelt. I think one of the best names as well in comics. But he's the offsider to Lupinar the Wolf, who, for all intents and purposes, looks to be the big head honcho. And so we're brought again. We're given again two villains. And I believe as well, just as an aside, I think Lupinar was referenced in the Lemire run as the... Is that right, Connor? As the, Space Mark and...
Yes, Lupinar was
It was Lupinar, wasn't it? So that was a very...
I didn't even know he was a character, yeah.
Yeah, so a very obscure reference that Lemire has plucked, and we found it here, Loonies. It's in the Hulk magazine. But yeah, Lupinar was indeed a real character, a real villain back in the day. And he's got a very wolfish look to him. We don't know as yet whether he's he has to be a mutant of some sort. He's got like a wolfish nose. He's got like long claws. He's very hairy. Kind of the same ilk as Sabretooth and Wolverine. But he seems a lot more dapper. He does enjoy his fencing or swashbuckling. And his offsider, or his lackey Smelt, pretty much looks like a generic, blob of a lackey. But Connor, it just reminded me so much of Conquerlord and is it Weasel? His offsider.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Oh, poor Weasel.
So Doug Moench is kind of, I guess, recycled an idea again, and the way that they profile Mark, I thought, was very similar to Conquerlord.
They even reference him. He gets two different shout-outs in this issue.
Exactly.
So not quite the love lost for one of the best written villains in Marvel canon. So, I think credit where credit's due. I think this was the best he could do with Marvel editorial, obviously forcing his hand at giving away an incredible villain like Conqueror too soon.
Yeah, true. But it's good that he kind of references his own creation as well. I think that's good, and there's a bit of a wink to, this is similar to what we've kind of done before, but Lupinar definitely looks a lot more dangerous than, say, Conquerlord, who just seemed to be, for want of a better word, a little oafish in his schemes. As yet, Connor, I don't know. We don't know the motives for Lupinar at the moment. There's a whole thing with the plutonium, which and Leroux as well. I'm not sure how Lupinar fits into that. Have you any thoughts of how this web has been woven?
Yeah, look, honestly, I have zero clue, and I think it's a bit over worry whether we're going to actually see Lupinar develop into something or be really thrown aside so quickly, because admittedly, I am getting really excited for the showdown next issue. I think there's a lot of I like the inherent character traits of someone like Lupinar. Someone who's like almost honor bound and looking for a challenge, worthy of himself. Mm-hmm. Respect amongst thieves and all that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I don't know. Yeah, it just seems sort of very baseline, generic villain behavior for the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And I suppose we haven't really seen these guys ever make a return, so quite possibly they fizzle out with little interest there.
Yeah, it might be. Let's hope it's not another throwaway. I mean, although hindsight, we do know that we don't really see Lupinar much again, but let's hope at least the confrontation next issue will be an exciting finale. How about your next aspect there, Connor?
I will jump straight to another thing with the creators, with discussing Moench himself. His writing here is, really gaining the ropes of some comic writing. Leaving behind almost the traits of his his 70s nature with his Werewolf by Night run, and just sort of evolving into something more. Because I did actually, older comics can be kind of hard to read, and while this one wasn't the most, immaculate story, I found this really easy to read. It was able to just focus on dialogue. It didn't have any annoying text box explaining what's happening on screen. It was just a very natural fit for Moench's writing, and we can even see some of his fantastic poetic writing start to fit through that would make Moon Knight stand out more amongst its its own exposition and the exposition of the time. I think page 48 has some really fantastic overarching dialogue about action and the explanations of the characters. So yeah, I think obviously I'm not sure whether they maybe didn't have as much editorial oversight forcing their hand, but I think this works really well, and just the merits of a comic writer like Moench sort of exploring what to do with his character and just being able to write what he can. So while I'll never quite credit this as something I want to reread compared to like the Defenders we've read before, and even some of the earlier Marvel magazines. It just feels so much more natural and interesting to read.
Yeah, I would agree as well. I think there are glimpses of what you see. It's still a long way, I think, from Moench's writing, say, with the 1980 series where he writes it with Stained Glass Scarlet, which had so much. I remember we covered that with Rebecca, and there was so much poetry in how he wrote stuff, so much lyricism in how he told the story. There are glimpses of that here as well. But yeah, he's starting to tighten up, I think, as well. And this is a really enjoyable. I did enjoy this far more than I did the last previous couple of issues as well. It wasn't as the thread was a lot more apparent. It wasn't as convoluted as I think the first part of this whole arc, where there were just so many characters you had to kind of get your head around, and a lot of them worked for another person that worked for another person that you had to kind of keep track of. So I think Moench is definitely tightening up his writing here as well. And I found it flow quite easily and not deterred at all by, again, a thing of the times. There was a lot more scripted stuff, a lot more dialogue here than what you see in a lot of issues these days. Like, you can go through some comic book issues these days in a matter of minutes because it's so kind of like text light. But not to say that that's always a bad thing. That can be a good thing as well. There was a what was it? Oh no, that was the other way around. I was about to say there was a Bloodshot issue recently, but that was no art. It was like it was all black. So and that was Lemire as well. So everyone's trying something a little different. But yeah, I found this story flowed quite well, and Moench actually, does actually add a couple of slightly different twists, which are quite interesting. And having said that, I would say that the fourth aspect of this issue, and the second one for myself, would be, I guess, the new thread to this story. So what we had in the last previous issues was all about obtaining the Horus statuette, which we saw in the last couple of issues. Mark had traced it down to Alphonse Leroux, who worked for the Chilean embassy, and he had the Horus statuette, and he struck a deal with Stephen Grant to sell it to him. But Stephen Grant said, "Look, I'll send my courier, which is Moon Knight, to collect it." And that's where we kind of start on this issue. And what I liked about it was that it kind of wrapped up that first arc of actually getting the Horus statuette. So you actually see Moon Knight obtain it and fight a couple of thugs around the middle, as you said, kind of around page 49. He kind of gets a Horus statuette, and that kind of ends that. But then it organically leads to the next arc, which is the terrorists who so happen to do the handoff with the handover with Moon Knight for the horror statuette, they had this other little gig about hijacking a truck and stealing some stuff, and it's because of Crawley that Moon Knight catches wind of this, and that kind of takes us to the next chapter, I guess, in Moon Knight's adventures. And that's, I guess, what he's going to do with the plutonium, how he's going to stop these crooks from blackmailing New York City. And, it kind of eased into the introduction of Smelt and Lupinar. So, I guess it ties in kind of with your aspect about Moench's storytelling. I think it was a nice, effective way to kind of quickly end that arc and then move on to the next next mission, so to speak.
Yeah, I think the Horus thing was kind of like wrapped up real quickly, and obviously never had much influence on Moon Knight again, I guess. So yeah, but I think immediately it kind of jumps into these another very big story arc. But I think they do that naturally enough that it isn't, really jarring, and we have a nice setup of a big thread of, the end of New York, and I do really like Lupinar, so I think it does well with that, and it kind of gets me more excited for the next issue.
Yeah. Lupinar's very much a thing of his time, isn't he? Like, the way he's dressed, he's, don't know whether he's a pirate or something. He does like his scabbard, I think that's what you call it. And he's got a funky frilly shirt and a codpiece as well, so he's, I don't know, you don't see many of those running around these days. So any before we rate this issue, Connor, any notes that you might want to raise?
I suppose I kind of want to talk about the origin again this issue. This issue is very much as it says, is a profile of Moon Knight as we talk about him, and they go a bit into his history, so forgive me as I take a bit to pull that up.
Yeah, no worries. But yeah, it's Moench, I guess, trying to mould this history of Moon Knight. You see, he's done it a few times, a retelling, and he's still trying to figure it out. I guess this is one of the earlier connections we have, kind of with an Egyptian connection to Moon Knight. Moench hasn't yet come up with his origin of Bushman and Mark Spector and the plundering of one of the tombs in Egypt. That doesn't come up until about until 1980 in the Moon Knight series. So Moench is still trying to figure out, what kind of makes Moon Knight tick. And as you say, Connor, there's a retelling here again through a slideshow of Moon Knight's past.
Yeah, it's nothing. He sort of. I'm just pulling it up. Yeah, it's interesting how he sort of tackles the idea of the identities here as well. Mm-hmm. He has the main ones, but he talks about one he just throws aside.
Yeah,
and how he talks about escaping the military man, he could sort of hide into himself with these identities.
So yeah, the whole identities thing came before, I guess. That was one of the
main. And it talks about his wealth as well, which was interesting.
Yeah. Oh, with Stephen Grant.
The copper mines. That's how he got all his money. Copper mines.
Oh right. Oh, I missed that bit. Yeah, cool. Yeah. So there's a retelling of his origin here. It goes through again his encounter with the werewolf, which references...
that was the thing I wanted. Yeah,
the werewolf
to bring up the most, I guess. He speaks about the power from the moon as well is well asserted here.
Yes, so
despite the fact it would later be ignored.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's just the thing that shows me that Moench is still kind of playing with what he wants to do with Moon Knight, whether he wants to make him a wholly supernatural thing and have it being bitten by a werewolf, which is kind of a cool idea, but as you say, that was dropped and never really spoken of for a long time after that. But yeah, I did find that thing about his moon strength being pretty funny and historical.
Yeah, nothing would ever stick in this issue, but it's interesting to see the seeds of origin planted here.
Yeah. Other notes again. I think it's a shout out to Crawley again. He again shows his worth to Moon Knight or Jake Lockley by giving away some information that leads Moon Knight towards the terrorists hijacking the truck. So again, Crawley's quite a valuable resource for Moon Knight, and yeah, I think Moench is really enjoying this character Crawley as well. I mean, there's even a mention of it's a mention of one of Crawley's idiosyncrasies, which is to reuse his tea bag. So yeah, you can see Moench, slowly forming his support characters as well, which is pretty cool. Well, the other one that I had was what I found was pretty cool, and we don't see that all that often, is Mark Spector going undercover as well. So you mentioned, Connor, it being really like a spy drama or a spy magazine, and you have Mark with his mercenary training going undercover and pretending to be employed by Alphonse Leroux to kind of get in with the terrorists stealing the plutonium. So yeah, I know. I just like that idea of a bit of covert methods by Moon Knight. That was pretty good.
Yeah, and once we sort of crack into the actual Moench run, we'll see more of like a Mark Spector getting to do things, which is probably one of the biggest things that's almost been thrown aside the past years on Moon Knight.
Oh yeah,
whereas the biggest thing that hasn't been kind to was actually Mark Spector.
Well, yeah, he had a whole series for himself, Mark Spector, Moon Knight. And again, we've mentioned this before as well. And Chuck Dixon has confirmed that the editors at Marvel wanted that run to be to basically ignore the multiple identities and just concentrate on Mark's mercenary days, which was quite interesting. But yeah, to me he's kind of like the main identity, as opposed to, I know Marlene likes Stephen Grant, and we do like our Jake Lockley as well, but he does seem to be the core identity, Mark Spector. So yeah, it was good to see him in the spotlight on this issue. Well, actually, all the identities were kind of used well.
Yeah, actually used rather well.
Yeah. So, yeah. Look, apart from that, just the other notes as well. It says Moench really enjoys pitting Moon Knight against just a room full of thugs, and so we see it yet again. And so, I'm just thinking, apart from him battling Jack Russell, the werewolf, Moon Knight pretty much just fights just street criminals, and no one of we haven't seen Black Spectre yet, or anyone like that. I guess the Defenders, he fought the Zodiac, which was a bit of fun, but in his own self-contained stories, he generally just fights against normal people, normal criminals.
Yeah, like I said, I think this was really Moench finally getting to leave his mark on the character. We really do see the setup unlike anything we got before, even the first Marvel fanfare, and then we had the Defenders run, people trying to give a lot more basic take, but I think there's a real focus on the identities with his sidecast that would all be rather influential in the run. So this is finally the creator trying to do something compared to Marvel trying to just push it onto others to make it popular.
Yeah. So, having said that, Connor, I think we should close the book on this one and give our Crescent Art ratings for this one, the Hulk. Actually, let me just... This is called the Hulk with an exclamation mark, right? It's not the Hulk or the Rampaging Hulk or anything like that. No, it's just the Hulk.
The Hulk.
Yeah, the Hulk. Super Colour Magazine. For this one, Connor, the Hulk with a backup story, the big Blackmail. What would you give this Moon Knight story?
I would probably give it a solid 3. I think it's probably one of the stronger pieces in Moon Knight history, along with that Marvel Fanfare issue we covered as one of our first podcast reviews.
Yes.
I think this is a creator really trying to leave his mark. I think the setup here is easily one of the interesting things to trace back to Moon Knight. I think just the writing as well makes it more interesting to read than a lot of others we'd face, but the story just kind of doesn't do a whole lot. I think if you look at it as a fun, old, pulpy spy story, with a few Moon Knight touches, you could probably enjoy this, but I hope to see a more superhero shenanigans in the next issue with Lupinar. But I think it's definitely pulled together with just some easy-to-read writing and some strong art and colours as well. So, strong 3 out of 10, I think. Right,
3 out of 10?
Almost in the middle. 3 out of... It was rubbish, guys. I changed my mind and like that. Screw it. It sucks. No. 3 out of 10.
Off the back of that, one of the main things I'd have to agree was the art. I actually really enjoy the art and the colours. I'd give it a 3.5, only because I think I gave too high for the previous issues, so I wanted to give this one just a little bit more. So if I gave 3.5 for the previous issues, I'd probably bump those down to 3, and this one a 3.5, because I enjoyed this a lot more. And it's not that good as to give it a 4, so anyway, that's why I'm going for 3.5. I enjoyed it. I thought this Moench writing was quite fluent, but the art was the main thing for me. The introduction of new villains is always fun. At the moment, though, there isn't too much flair with, aesthetics-wise, like for villains. There's no, there's no Black Spectre or Bushman or Morpheus yet, like with distinct looks. These villains still very much seem like street-level villains, so it gives such a reality, I guess, bound in, just street-level adventures, which is really cool. But yeah, 3.5. I'll be happy with that. I would read this again, I'd say, if not just to look at the art as well. So yeah, 3.5 it is, which gives us an average of about 3.25 or something. So check it out, loonies. The Hulk, Volume 1, Issue 13. Okay, so we are moving on to our modern run now, and as always, nice juicy story arc here. We are returning to the Charlie Huston run of Volume 5, and I'll have to throw it over to Phil again from the Capes and Lunatics podcast to give us the bare bones for this. So take it away, Phil.
Hey everyone, Phil Parrish here from the Capes and Lunatics and Capes and Lunatics Sidekicks podcasts. I'm here today to do the bare bones synopsis, this week written by Tommy Cavill. All right, this one will be Moon Knight, Volume 5, Issue 4, The Bottom, Chapter 4. Written by Charlie Huston, penciled by David Finch, inked by Danny Mickey with Alan Martinez and Victor Olazaba. Colored by Frank D'Armata, lettered by VC's Joe Caramagna, and edited by Axel Alonso, Corey Settlemeyer, and Daniel Ketchum. He was a mercenary, a killer, and then he was a hero. Mark Spector used to jump from rooftops, spread his cape against the night, and drop to the streets below, dealing pain, dealing vengeance, all in the name of his lord Khonshu, god of vengeance, god of the moon. Took his lord's name and became his knight, became Moon Knight. He was a hero. He had everything, had a life like you read about in legends, but that was years ago. Before he lost his friends, lost his love, lost his God, and finally lost himself. In an alley in the rain, he crossed a line he barely knew was there, killing an evil man, doing evil himself, exiling himself to the cage of a broken body, wanting it all back. He answers a call from a friend, Jean-Paul Frenchy Duchamp, the best friend a man ever had. But it's not Frenchy calling, it's the past. The new committee, dark sons of men who once paid his wages, men he betrayed, have set wheels in motion. Plots laid by their employee, the profile, have untimely hatched. Duchamp pays the price in blood, and Spectre takes the vengeance that is his due, not knowing that another pawn lurks. The new committee's contingency T. Beaten at the feet of Khonshu, Mark Spectre weeps from his freshly scarred eye. He praises his god, thanks him for his blessings, but Mark once more. Khonshu mocks Spectre. Covered with the bloody mask of Bushman's skinned face, the statue reveals a faceless Bushman haunting the shadows of Mark's lonely quarters. Is this Raoul? Back from the grave? The voice is there at least. Bushman calls Mark the sorriest piece of shit he's ever seen. The action cuts to a dirty studio apartment in the city, lit with the burning red glow of the neon sign outside. The profile lies in bed with a hookup. Photos, maps, and pinned-up pentagrams adorn the wall behind his bed. He pours her a drink. He reads his mistress like a book. They're talking about Spectre. At the feet of Khonshu's statue, Mark denies the Bushman avatar. He refuses to believe this is real. Spectre thinks this is the work of Morpheus. But as Bushman transforms into Peter Allrun, there's a flashback to Allrun's death at the hands of the Nemesis himself. The profile, away, tells his hookup that all of us were just what our pasts make us, and Mark's is nothing but trauma. People are programmed to react to phenomena in certain ways, but Mark only seems to know trauma. Mark grabs a revolver and Bushman knows what will happen next. Quickly, Bushman attempts to soothe Mark as he moves the revolver closer to his temple. Bushman first places his skinned face over the tearing remnants of his skull. No good. He changes forms to Crawley and then Frenchy next. No dice. Finally, Khonshu takes on the form of Marlene Allrun and whispers, "It's me." Mark stops, wide-eyed and tearful. He's paused. Zooming back, Bushman stands over Mark's shoulders and again whispers, "It's me, my priest. This isn't Bushman. It's Khonshu in the flesh." He never abandoned Mark. He would never abandon his last true son. The profile fills in the gaps. The new committee, the sons of the first committee, desire Moon Knight for their own. Filled with hate for their fathers, they plan to bring Moon Knight in and turn him into their personal assassin. For the time being, Moon Knight stands solely in the eyes of his god and light, Khonshu. The profile believes that Moon Knight isn't the typical run-of-the-mill superhero. He's influenced by the supernatural. There's no telling what he's after, what he needs. Yet Mark is still programmed like anyone. Why else would a rabbi's son serve as the avatar for an Egyptian god? The profile weaves a narrative for his inquisitive mistress and offers backstory for newcomers. Rabbi Spectre fled the Holocaust and has since led a highly orthodox life in Chicago. His first wife died giving birth to Mark. Father resents son rejects father's god, father rejects son goes looking for love. Mark was a boxer, a soldier, a mercenary. He's good at hurting others. That's why Khonshu chose him. But why did Khonshu leave him? He didn't. Khonshu has always cared for Mark. He has always raised him up. Does Mark doubt his god now? No. Khonshu will reward Mark for his work, with glories, with everything he desires. Bushman Khonshu fades away. From the doorway, Marlene enters. With derision in her voice, she screams at Mark, angry that Mark has broke Frenchy's attacker. But Mark's standing, he tells her, "I'm standing." What does she care? Frenchy is hospitalized. It must be Mark's fault. He denies it, but Marlene makes him rethink. What's the connection? Just as Marlene realizes that Mark has uncovered the statue of Khonshu, the window breaks. Taskmaster soars through the shrapnel of glass, sword and shield at the ready. Marlene in her rage leaps at Taskmaster. Mark darts a blade toward the intruder, but Taskmaster smacks Marlene with the cross guard of his blade. She falls, but Taskmaster is impressed. The two have fighting chemistry. Regardless, Taskmaster is here with purpose. He has a contract and he's fixing to get paid. The gig, kill Spectre. Taskmaster pins Mark to the floor and with his own crescent darts and stands over Mark's broken body, readying the kill.
Yes, great. Thanks again, Phil. That was really well done. And hats off to our man on the streets, Tommy. He's written another beauty of a bare bones for us there. So not only do we get the story of issue 4, but Tommy's also done a really good recap of everything leading up to that issue.
Might even just link it again, but it's really worth checking out Phil's article on Moon Knight, the Khonshu conspiracy as well.
Oh, yes.
Phil obviously has a lot of love for this character, and I think he lended it all to his vocal work.
Yes, it was very cool to have Phil on, and for sure, check out Phil's blog. It's really good, really insightful as well. So Connor, this is our modern run, needless to say, a very dark issue again, very much so compared to the previous issue. First thoughts?
I was really sad I missed out on the last issue. Just once again, I find this even more than the hyperviolence of this series. I think the real deconstruction and criticism of Mark Spector in this run has been so interesting. I think we see that continue in this, that just leads to such fantastic dialogue, and with this just this atmosphere of just nothing going right, and just seeing Mark Spector for who he truly is, and using the profile for just really fantastic introspection on all the characters in this, really grimy world. Just gives the just the world of Moon Knight such an interesting and different take.
Most certainly. I think Huston uses a profile so well here to really psychoanalyze Mark and to show to the reader a greater understanding of how the profile, sees and understands people. So I think that was a really great tool from Charlie Huston to use in the profile. As you're saying, kind of, it's very dark, and we get stuff like not only the graphic, horror of seeing Bushman, without his face, but stuff like Mark putting a gun to his temple, and him wanting to take his own life. This is very, very dark, very grim kind of. This is a very grim corner of the Marvel universe, and so we're kind of taken down there. But as Tommy writes in his narration as well, we're getting the seedy underbelly with the neon lights coming in through a dingy studio apartment, and it really does cap off the feeling that you get when you read this Huston run. So really, really good.
Yeah, so I'll let you kick off with one of your points first, actually, this time.
Yeah, sure. I think the first one, and it's the obvious one, within the first couple of pages, we see Bushman, basically, without his face, come to haunt Mark. But what it is that, obviously, as we read further on, we later understand that it's Khonshu, right? But before Mark knows that, he feels like, obviously, various things. One, he's going crazy. He's starting to see people that he's killed too. He's probably suffering guilt from killing Bushman that way, and he has fallen into such depths that to the point where he's about to kill himself, basically, and Bushman / Khonshu has to kind of, after pretending to be Crawley, Peter O'Rain, Frenchie and Marlene, just when Mark is about to kill himself, he has to reveal himself as Khonshu, and that kind of gives Mark, faith again, because he's been searching for Khonshu for most recently, I'd say.
I think, this is the start of the real terrifying image of the Bushman Khonshu analogy.
Yes.
I think just this look at fate is just, so interesting, but also so critical. We see Khonshu return, but what that actually means for Mark is just something so much else. I think never more than possibly this run has Khonshu been criticised more as a force of just pure violence and seeing, a true reflection of Mark. I think,
yes.
I think I might even just sort of include my point here as well, because I think we can just so easily fall into, how we see Mark in this issue. I think, a big thing about this issue, both thematically and sort of in the thing with Khonshu, is learning to stand again. Mark brings up, just how quickly he can stand again now and how he's had his faith restored and all that. But, there's this real dynamic of just what Khonshu has meant to Mark is just, basically destroyed the rest of his life. Marlene points out that Khonshu is the reason, he claims that Khonshu is the reason he's sent up now, but Marlene's just sort of immediately destroyed that idea of, faith and the fact that Mark had basically quit. He'd been able to do this for so long, but the reveal of Khonshu again is the only reason he can do it, which, Huston positions as just, Mark's own inner demons at wanting to sort of hurt people again, and what the profile definitely brings up is Mark wanting to, very much just hurt again. It's this violence that has ruined his life, but also now has basically just finally been reflected to himself, as in, the whole title of this, A Mirror, just shows the flaws in Khonshu and the flaws of Mark, and, just because he's got Khonshu back doesn't mean Mark is any closer to being restored. No. And possibly that Mark needs to change the way he sees Khonshu if he ever hopes to continue, which is something, you'd see Lemire bring up later. Bemis is most recently included, like, the power of crazy, so to speak. So yeah, it's there's a lot going on.
Oh, for sure, and it's this dependency that Mark has for Khonshu, which is, it's almost as if Khonshu's like a drug, right? It's Mark relies so much on Khonshu, like, to give him strength. And when you say as well, Connor, when Marlene enters the picture and she says, you could always stand, you just didn't believe it. And she says, you're a quitter. Like, the moment it got hard, you just quit, right? But that's because I think, because in Mark's point of view, it's because Khonshu has deserted him. So he kind of has lost that strength, and he depends on Khonshu to give him that extra push, I guess, to actually, push through, with being Moon Knight, or to push through difficulties. He relies on Khonshu, and you see it so much here, like when the Bushman visage finally says, look, it's me, my priest, and Mark realizes that Bushman is actually Khonshu. The first thing he says is, why did you leave me? He's very much like connected to Khonshu in that sense, and almost kind of like addicted to having Khonshu with him all the time. So again, and then that also stretches out into, and what the profile later talks about Mark as well, about Mark's programming, and this is what the profile sees, and it goes into his origin with his dad, the rabbi, and this whole, I guess, it's the whole thing of being accepted by his father, because he does refer to Khonshu as my, I think he refers to him as my father, or Khonshu always refers to him as my son. So, there are some parallels there as well between Mark and Khonshu, and Mark and his father. It's a really difficult thing, and it shows that Mark definitely has a long way to go before he's healed. And as you say, Connor, he'd probably have to rethink his relationship with Khonshu if he wants to make both his life as a superhero and life with his friends work. Because Marlene is just like, she's just livid with him. And in one of my notes here, I think it's, I had to smirk to myself as well. Like, remember we were really shocked when Mark struck Marlene, punched her in the face. Well, she gets her own here, and she punches him and draws blood to Mark to make him realise, trying to make him snap out of it, that he can do this himself. He shouldn't be a quitter, and he shouldn't rely on Khonshu so much. But Yeah, very powerful stuff in this issue.
Yeah.
Look, I'll just go. I'll go with my second one because
since I don't know what kind of happened to aspects there, they all kind of intertwined as we sort of covered the same sort of great part of this issue.
Exactly, and your last one is a nice one to finish on. So, look, my second aspect was again another big part of this issue, and it was basically the profile and his psychological study of Mark Spector. So, as mentioned before, I really love how Huston interweaves the profile and his narrative in through the story as well, of when we see Mark dealing with Khonshu. And I really do like how the profile, he has this chat with this hookup that he has to kind of explain how he works, and it actually helps to explain the committee as well, but most importantly to explain where Mark's coming from, and by explaining his past with his dad kind of like them being estranged, and Mark's tendency towards violence. It was a really good way to, again, a different sort of way to what we saw in Moench's origin retelling in the Hulk magazine that we just reviewed. A different way to kind of expose a bit more of Mark's origins.
Yeah, I think as well, the profile is just such an interesting way at basically deconstructing this whole entire world. I think it's really almost the author placing himself within the story, almost as like a guide to the world, because I think Huston is a fairly prolific crime writer, I believe, with his own novels, and just here when he's taken the world of Moon Knight, I think he's really brought that sensibility and sort of his own intelligent writing and the way he's used to deconstruct is basically formed in the character of the profile, and he's just such an interesting character to listen to, and I think him dissecting Mark Spector the world itself just brings it so naturally without the need for dialogue, and just makes it not dialogue obviously, or without the need for exposition, and just makes it so much more enjoyable to be taken on this ride, and then see it so explicitly with the Khonshu and Mark interactions and the Mark and Marlene interactions. It's just such a brilliant way at deconstructing such a specific anti-hero like Moon Knight that just could have been done so poorly, but it's just done so excellently. And I think seeing it happen to the villains as well, and knowing that the profile also in his own way is almost a villain, it's just incredible.
Yeah, and look, I'll go into a few of the notes I got here as well on the profile, but what I love about how Huston writes a profile in this issue as well is how you get more of a backstory to him, like indirectly. So we have this dialogue between him and his hookup, and she mentions something about she doesn't like mutants, and then he has this little comment of you could have fooled me. So that alludes to the fact that he might be a mutant himself. So as a reader, you kind of start to form a picture of the profile. So we know now that he's most likely a mutant. Also, there's a profile mentions about profiling just everyone in general. Mutants are quite easy to profile. Superhumans or chemically enhanced people are pretty easy to read, but supernaturals are difficult to profile because they seem to be a bit more unpredictable, and that's where Moon Knight and Khonshu falls in. But the hookup asks the profile, do you believe that this Khonshu is a god? And the profile says, look, I couldn't really be asked. I don't care, but I do know that it's a supernatural entity. So, whether it's a god or not, he doesn't know, but he just knows that it's hard to assess these sorts of beings once they interact with Mark Spector or Moon Knight. And finally, as well, there's just a nice little reference, I think, and it harks back to the title of the issue, which is Interest in a Mirror. The hookup again asks the profile if he's got a mirror so she can look at herself, and he says, do you really think that I would keep a mirror, like, of all the things I've told you? And that's a really nice, cool way of saying, if the profile looked at himself in the mirror, he would immediately profile himself, and I think he's not that keen to see what he would uncover if he did look at himself. So I do like those little points towards the profile. Yeah. Pretty strong. Pretty strong character. So, yeah. But,
And something...
Sorry?
I was just going to say a character we definitely don't see disappear anytime soon as well.
Yeah.
He's going to make some great stuff in the later issues that we'll be covering.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm hoping that he comes back. I can't remember where he ended up, but I really do hope he comes back soon. Hopefully Bemis will pluck him out of obscurity and put him in a series as well.
I suppose my last point is... Actually, wait. How much is the profile almost done after this? Has he done much? I can't remember his fate in this.
I can't remember after this, but I do know he's in Shadowland. And from there, I kind of lost track of him.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't know whether he turns up anywhere else. The Bendis run, maybe? I don't know. I'll have to check. Loonies, please write in. Let us know.
We could have more men on the street working hard to search down the true location of the profile at this very moment. He's probably dead or obscure or both.
Yeah, hope he's not dead. But then again, comics. If you're dead, you're not dead, really, are you?
My next point is just a final quick one that we see in the last few pages.
Yeah. It's a biggie.
Just sort of Taskmaster getting dropped in as we see him become the villain for the next issue, and sort of at the end here, and I just want to make a quick mention that he's wonderful. He is scary and terrifying to look at.
Yes.
And his own sort of quirky, violent, deranged sense of humour is just, such a contrast to all the crazy violence we've seen, while also so fitting in with Huston's, look at this grimy, crime-filled world.
Yeah.
It's just fun. Just terribly fun in it.
It is fun.
Dark comic.
Yeah, it's fun, and it does kind of throw you off a bit, I think, because, as you say, he still looks terrifying, drawn by David Finch as this, hulking, scary-looking assassin. But, yeah, you're right, he's so quirky as well. It kind of throws you off, I guess, in the same way that Spider-Man would throw you off with all his quips. He's really cool to see, and just going on from, I guess, my previous comments, this is the sort of thing that I'd love, I like Moon Knight beating up on a lot of street-level thugs, but to have him go up against a notified villain as well is pretty fun to see. So we only get a sense of it here. But yeah, Taskmaster's just brilliant, isn't he? And I love how Marlene jumps into action as well. Like, she's such a pro with Mark Spector. And Taskmaster calls her out on it, saying, oh, you guys obviously have fought together before, you know what to do. But he's right on top of them. Like, with his photographic reflexes, he's just your epitome of the ultimate assassin.
I think we know we've got a listener, and Bare Bones, Sparky Malarkey, who's a big fan of Taskmaster. I can see why. I loved him in Secret Empire as well, and I think he totally is just such a fine addition to anything with his own sort of crazy sensibilities.
Oh, for sure. I'm gonna have to track down that Taskmaster miniseries. I think that Sparky was talking about.
Never read that at all.
Be really interesting because he is an interesting character. I'm sure he's got a lot of skeletons in the closet, so to speak, to deal with. But it's really good to see him towards the end, and he has Mark in a precarious position at the end. So a nice little cliffhanger there from Charlie Huston. Right, before we go into any of the Crescent Dark ratings for this, Connor, the very dark issue of issue number 4, just a couple of notes, I guess. Look, a couple of things I picked up. There's that visage of Peter Alraine, which is Marlene's dad, which Khonshu conjures up as himself. And again, we see a different method of how he dies. We have a vision of the knife at the back of his neck. So far we've seen him, his throat ripped out by Bushman's teeth, I think, which is in the 1980s run. We've seen in the Lemire run, I think he gets stabbed in the chest or the stomach. And in this iteration, he apparently gets stabbed at the back of the neck. So maybe this kind of is the what do you call it? The unreliable narrative from someone. Maybe it's Mark just having different versions of how it actually happened in his head.
Yeah, and definitely with just sort of how unreliable Mark's head is, and with the profiling him, possibly could chalk up to that, because we also see a far different version of Mark's father and his childhood, as well as what Lemire would do later on with him, being kicked out and resented. We definitely saw part of that resentment, but for the most part, he was almost looked down upon. Doesn't seem to be as sort of, sad or, just sort of as this was, because, in the Lemire run, he sort of ended up as a young man in psychiatric care, being looked after, then sort of what happened with Mark's father in this. But yeah, so I mean, we can always chalk that up to the unreliable narrator, but it was interesting to see it as the I guess what probably would have been the main origin for him at the time, then, when it came to his childhood, until Lemire came along, and now Bemis.
That's true, yeah. So we'll get another version of that coming up very shortly in a few weeks, I guess. Look, the other thing as well, I thought was just a little pointed out to the Bushman's pouches. I think very much maybe a callback to the 90s there, a bit of Liefeld. He's got numerous pouches. And the other notes I've covered about the profile, and just, about how Marlene punches Mark at the end, which was, I don't know, it's a level of satisfaction there of, like, kind of wake up, Mark.
Get back at him for everything.
Yourself, exactly. And she packs a wallop as well. She, manages to draw blood from him. So good on you, Marlene. Connor, so I guess wrapping... Well, actually, we haven't wrapped up this arc just yet, but we're getting there. But how about part 4, Interest in a Mirror? What would you give this Crescent Dart rating?
I think I would give this a strong 4.5 Crescent Darts out of 5. Not 10.
Fantastic.
Out of 5. I think it's just incredible writing. I love the look at Faith, the look at Mark as a character, the look at violence in this world, and just the profile giving such psychoanalysis. And I think his brilliant writing, just the way we see this world, the way we see it constructed, deconstructed, just incredibly well done by Huston. The interactions between Mark and Khonshu and Mark and Marlene are just, just do so much with the state of the character and set up so many changes happening. It's just brilliant character work, so in depth, so realised. Easy 4.5.
Yeah, I would give it a solid 4.5 as well. It's right up there, I think, with a lot of the Lemire issues. Exactly as you say, Connor. Basically, it's really... I think the strength of this issue lies in the thread told by the profile. I think that's a backbone of this issue. And from that, you get... Although it's opened up with, you get Mark and Bushman / Khonshu discussing themselves, and from that as well, so put that all together, you get that psychology of the character of Mark and what he goes through. I think it was very cleverly done by Huston, and again, I'm a big fan of the art as well. Very dark, very graphic, but also, it still found time to have Marlene come in there and actually give him a bit of a wake-up call as well, kind of ground him a bit more. And on top of that as well, just in the last 2 pages, you have what we ended up from the previous issue. You have Taskmaster coming in and adding that kind of action value and cliffhanger element to the end. So, very strong issue. 4.5, I think, out of 5 there. And, looking forward to the next part.
Agreed, I hope we might even, hopefully try to get some others on as well to discuss this arc, because I think there's just so much to pull apart here, so much to discuss. I think, I almost want to get writing. I think there's an interesting almost connection between this here and Bemis' idea of the power of the crazy in his latest arc. I think that actually kind of ties nicely into this Huston's view of the character, which I'd love to discuss in some way. But such a strong run. Everyone knows that. We always talk about it, but it really is just absolutely grimy and wonderful.
Oh, yeah, it's a cracker, definitely. Well, that wraps up the modern run there, Connor. So 2 issues again in the can there for reviews. We forge ahead. Looking forward to what lies ahead, and what would that be possibly next phase?
Next phase, we are looking at the finale of our coverage of the Damnation tie-in event, but not quite the end of Damnation itself. Will be covering Ben Reilly Scarlet Spider issue 18, which is part 12 of the Damnation Epic Podcast crossover super deluxe mega event between ourselves, Inner Demons, Ghost Rider, the Ghost Rider podcast, Sons of the Dragon, the Immortal Iron Fist podcast, and Defenders TV podcast. So hopefully you've been with us long enough to check those guys out. If not, we've always got links to them around our site. So yeah, and speaking of, we'll have part 10 of the Damnation review will be Iron Fist issue 79 review by the Sons of the Dragon podcast, which will probably be coming out around the same time as we record our next episode. Same as the Defenders TV podcast doing part 11 event with Doctor Strange 388. So there's so much content to get yourself hooked into if you're enjoying this Damnation event.
Yeah, there's so much happening at the moment. So unfortunately, our classic and modern runs aren't as fluent, but that's a good thing. You know, we have this Damnation event to cover. There's so much Mooney happening at the moment, and then we've got the modern run, the current run coming out as well. So there's a lot to cover. We're enjoying it all. But yeah, I mean, it won't be long before we return to our classic and modern runs as well. But as Connor says, it's all about Damnation next episode. So please be sure to keep an eye out on that event and to keep track with all the issues. It should be fun. Also, as a spectacle, I'd like to shout out, and this is more for locals around Sydney, so any Sydney loonies out there, as a shout out to Natasha, and she's an organiser of, there's a Facebook page called Northern Sydney Comic Swap Meet, and she has started this event. It's going to be, the very first event will be held on Sunday the 29th of April from 11 to 3 p.m, and it's held at the Hornsby Odeon Cinema. And just speaking with Natasha online as well, she just wants to make this a quarterly thing, which I think is a great idea, and just to see all the like-minded comic collectors in and around the area, and just a meet and greet, and you never know who you might meet or what you might find in this comic swap meet. So it's all about trading. If you want to trade. Your collections, you just, it'd be good. It'd be good to just, it's a great idea by Natasha, so I just wanted to give her a shout out there. Let me just have a quick look at the information there. So if you want to be a vendor, it will cost you $18, and just contact Natasha on the Northern Sydney Comic Swap Meet page. And for people who want to go to the event as well, it's just a gold coin donation for entry. Not much to ask for there, but you could find yourself that issue that you've been looking for years. They also
I'm so sad we don't have.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, so sad I don't have anything like this near me.
You never know. Like all it takes is one person with with the want for something, and we're lucky enough to have Natasha to do it. And who knows? Maybe this will urge on others to do something similar. Finally, as well, just Natasha says that there's going to be prizes as well. So there'll be a prize for a lucky vendor, courtesy of Odeon Cinemas and Disney. They'll be giving away a 9-foot Black Panther banner poster. So if you're up for one of them, why not consider being a vendor? That should be very good. Natasha's not finished there. She's also organised on the 24th of April, that's a Tuesday night, 7 to 9 p.m, there's a Marvel Trivia Night, again at the Hornsby Odeon Cinema. And it will be MCU-themed trivia. It's an $8 entry fee, free M&Ms, Skittles and soft drinks, and there's chances to win a whole lot of prizes. So grab your tickets. Again, I think you can find that through the Northern Sydney Comic Swap Meet. So that's a bit of fun, Connor. Actually, I've actually got in touch with David Finn from from Signal of Doom, and Stu, his co-host as well. They are around the area, and we may well be forming a trivia team for that night, which will be interesting. So I'll have to let you know how that goes.
Hell yeah. Once again, very jealous.
Well, I mean, I think that about wraps it up, Connor. We've just got just an outro, I guess, of where to find us. Do you mind giving that a shout out?
Where to find us? Of course, you can find us with our own website, Into the Night Podcast.wordpress.com. We have all our updates, episodes, all our links, everything put in a nice one little spot. If you want to contact us, you can get us at Gmail, moonnightpodcast@gmail.com. We're Twitter at ITK Moon Knight. Our Facebook page is facebook.com/ITK Moon Knight. We have a fantastic group, always conversation about Moon Knight going on with plenty of people you've heard on the show, coming from where we've met in there at facebook.com/groups/Into the Night. If you want to listen to the other episodes, if you're finding this somehow and don't know where else to find this, you can watch us on, get us on YouTube, all good podcast catchers, SoundCloud,
Spotify,
Libsyn, all that great stuff. We're also on Instagram and Tumblr. Just search Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast, and we should be there, hopefully.
Cool. Yes. Well, I think that about wraps us up for this episode, Connor. It's been an absolute pleasure again. Been great to get through these issues. They're so different, aren't they? But they both yield some really good things about Moon Knight.
I hope there's enough talk about two interesting issues to discuss. And we'll be back next week with something decidedly un-Moon Knighty.
Yeah, exactly. Well, having said that as well, please take care, everyone. Thanks once again for listening. And as we always say, may Khonshu watch over the denizens of the night. Catch you later.
Wait.
Moon Knight and affiliated characters, stories and events are properties of Marvel Characters Incorporated. Materials used and discussed within the podcast are intended for critique and review purposes only under the fair dealing concept of the current Copyright Act. The views, information or opinions expressed during the podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of the copyright owners.